Hello everyone, this is the Andral, aka the German Viking, and I just wanted to touch on an article. I've been pretty busy and just been too tired to make videos, unfortunately. But I wanted to talk about video games basically being modern day scapegoat for everything that's wrong. D&D was that, heavy metal, and we have comic books, all sorts of new media that are being blamed for everything that's wrong in the world, so to speak. But now we have both sides of the aisle, because I made a video recently regarding Slate, commenting and giving the blame to Gamergate and games. And I wanted to just comment on this, and I want to read an article from Bounding into Comics. President Trump rehashes tired rhetoric, calls for action against gruesome, grisly video games in the wake of El Paso and Dayton shootings. In the wake of the domestic terror attacks in El Paso, Texas and Dayton, Ohio, President Trump rehashed the tired argument that violent video games are to blame for real-life incidents of violence. So how did World War I and II happen? Was it because of video games? I think not. Violence globally have gone down. So if anything, video games are responsible for less violence if we are going by the trend and statistics. Again, this is an older article. On the morning of August 5th, the President Trump appeared before the media to make a statement regarding the horrific back-to-back terror attacks that occurred in El Paso, Texas and Dayton, Ohio. In his statement, Trump asks Americans to condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. I don't have an issue with that, to be honest. While proposing preventative measures such as doing a better job at identifying and acting on early warning signs and reforming our mental health laws. Now again, I don't have any problems with that. During his statement, President Trump also cited the glorification of violence in our society. Okay, this is probably in when it comes to entertainment, which we all know the statistics and the studies. This is complete hogwash. This is bullcrap. With a specific nod to violent video games as a major contributing factor to the rise of domestic terror incidents. We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. We must stop or substantially reduce this, and it has to begin immediately. I'm going to counter this. Most of these young men, I would say, that have done these acts, they are lacking a father figure in their life. Maybe you should do something about family courts. Maybe you should do something about what the family looks like and the discrimination against men and boys. Do something with education that doesn't alienate boys and young men from society. That would be a better solution to this. But that's just my opinion on it. Trump's sentiment was echoed by other Republicans, including Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. How long are we going to ignore at the federal level, particularly where they can do something about the video game industry? You know, when it's people of authority, of government, wanting to basically censor something, that is very dangerous. That's why I think the Justice Scalia, who is responsible basically that games are protected under the First Amendment, and unfortunately games don't have this protection in Europe or elsewhere in the world, but they are protected under free speech. And so you can shut your pie hole, Lieutenant Dan. And this manifesto that we believe is from the shooter, this manifesto, where he talks about living out his super soldier fantasy on Call of Duty, we know that the video game industry is bigger than the movie and music industry combined. So what? So what? That doesn't prove anything. and GOP House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. But the idea that these video games that humanize individuals to have a game of shooting individuals and others, I've always felt. Listen and believe. Use feelings as emotion. Let me quote Ben Shapiro. Facts don't care about your feelings. I've always felt that is a problem for future generations and others. We've watched from studies shown before what it does to individuals. Cite those goddamn studies, you lying piece of crap. When you look at these photos of how it took place, you can see the actions within video games and others. Shut your goddamn pie hole. Violent video games have long been a go-to scapegoat for politicians attempting to skirt around the real issues and cause of real-world violence, despite the fact that research into the subject overwhelmingly shows that there is no correlation between violent video games and action. Yeah, exactly. In 2004, the United States Secret Service and the United States Department of Education published a study which found that only 1/8 of school attackers, students who specifically choose their school as their location for an attack using lethal means, exhibited an interest in violent video games. So, yeah, that just shows this claim that it's games making it's inconclusive. In January of this year, Oxford University concluded that violent video game engagement and on balance is not associated with observable variability in adolescents' aggressive behavior. In December 2018, Trump's own administration published a report which observed that most studies in this area find only a weak correlation results, and not only casual results, of the potentially negative effects of violent entertainment. See, even his own administration, you should probably... I think a elected president should do the best job he can. I just hope he changes his mind on this. I know he's kind of been backtracking and looking at mental health instead, but you should look at the cause of it instead. That's my opinion. The lack of compelling evidence proving a link between violent video games and behavior have even been noted by the Supreme Court in the landmark case Brown versus Entertainment Merchants Association. The late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia found that evidence provided by the state California attempting to link violent video game media to real-world aggression was not compelling. Goddamn, I can't speak today. The state's evidence is not compelling. California relies primarily on the research of Dr. Craig Anderson and a few other research psychologists whose studies purport to show a connection between exposure to violent video games and harmful effects on children. These studies have been rejected by every court to consider them, and with a good reason. They do not prove that violent video games cause minors to act aggressively, which would at least be a beginning. Instead, nearly all of the research is based on correlation, not evidence of causation. And most of the studies suffer from significant admitted flaws in methodology. Holy crap, this is really good debunk, to be honest. They show at best some correlation between exposure to violent video games and minuscule real-world effects, such as children feeling more aggressive and making louder noises in the few minutes after playing a violent video game than after playing a non-violent video game. Well, yeah, but that doesn't prove anything. If you lose, let's say you lose a game of sports, you're gonna be angry afterwards, but the effect wears off. Even taking for granted Dr. Anderson's conclusions that violent video games produce some effect on children's feelings of aggression, those effects are both small and indistinguishable from effects produced by other media. In his testimony in a similar lawsuit, Dr. Anderson admitted that the effect sizes of children's exposure to violent video games are about the same as that produced by their exposure to violence on television. Ding, ding, ding. And he admits that the same effects have been found when children watch cartoons starring Bugs Bunny or the Roadrunner. ID at 13 and 4, or when they play video games like Sonic the Hedgehog that are rated E, appropriate for all ages, or even when they view a picture of a gun. Again, real good points. In a statement to Vox, Dan Hewitt, the president of Entertainment Software Association, go screw yourself, dude. You're garbage. But let's hear what he has to say. Decry the trend. Oh, now you decry the trend. You have no issues selling gambling and loot boxes to children. Go screw yourself. Blaming violent video games for real-world tragedies. Study after study has established that there is no causal link between video games and real-world violence. Violent crime has been decreasing in our country at the very time that video games have been increasing in popularity, and other societies where video games are played as avidly do not contend with the tragic levels of violence that occur in the US. Pointing fingers at video games should not be allowed to obscure the factors that are likely to contribute to such incidents. Let's see what people have to say. I love all Trumpers, but this is grade A bullshit. Yeah, I don't think the reason for these attacks is because of video games, but the correct thing is that parents or guardians would teach their children the difference between violence shown in games, fiction, and violence shown in cases around the real-world reality. Again, they're making good points. Bad Trump. So anyways, I just think Trump should not do this. I think it would be a very bad idea to go after gamers, considering how large part of society gamers are really. I mean, everyone really games these days. So, and this is protected under the First Amendment, so that would just be a really bad idea. But it's interesting that the left and right are now attacking games because it's a popular thing to do, even though it's been debunked time after time after time, and yet they have no issues blaming them. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and see you guys next time. Bye.